Of course, let us begin a new journey. For tonight's story, we travel back in time to the ancient lands of southern Arabia. We will follow a scent, a fragrance so precious it was worth more than its weight in gold, a resin that built kingdoms and was offered to gods. We will walk the long, silent caravan routes of the frankincense trade. Hello, and welcome back to Boring History for Sleep. Take a moment now to let the day dissolve. Allow your body to grow heavy, to feel the firm and gentle support of the surface beneath you. Release the tension in your shoulders. Let your hands lie open and soft. Quiet the traffic of your mind. Let the thoughts of the day, of tomorrow, drift away like clouds of fragrant smoke, leaving behind a clear and peaceful sky. Breathe in slowly and deeply. And as you breathe out, imagine you are releasing all that is old and weary. Tonight, we follow an ancient road, a path of sand and stars. We are going to a place of stark and silent beauty to uncover the story of a simple resin, a tear from a tree that shaped the ancient world. So settle in, let the gentle rhythm of your breathing be your guide, and allow yourself to drift with me now into the warm, dry air of the ancient Incense Road. Our story begins in a place that was, to the great empires of the north, almost a myth, a secret kingdom of scent. We are traveling to the southern coast of the Arabian Peninsula, to the region known today as Dhofar in Oman and parts of Yemen. This specific, isolated corner of the earth was blessed, for it was the only place where the sacred tree, Boswellia sacra, the true frankincense tree, grew in abundance. Before we meet the people, let us first feel the land itself. Imagine a landscape carved by deep time. We are in a wadi, a great canyon-like valley, etched from the rock by powerful, sporadic floods that happened perhaps once in a generation. The walls of the wadi are steep, a tapestry of rock, the color of old honey, of sandstone and of limestone, layered like a history book written by the earth. The sun here is not a gentle friend, it is an elemental force. In the moments before dawn, the air is cool, and the sky is a deep, velvety purple, studded with cold, sharp stars. Then a thin line of incandescent orange appears on the ridge of the eastern hills, and the world holds its breath. The sun rises quickly, and with it comes the heat. By mid-morning, it is a brilliant white fire in a cloudless, turquoise sky. The heat is not humid or oppressive. It is a clean, dry, and absolute power that radiates from the rocks and from the fine, pale sand of the wadi floor. It shimmers above the ground, creating watery mirages in the distance. The silence here is a presence. It is not an absence of sound, but a sound in itself. It is a deep, resonant quiet that has weight. It is a silence that allows you to hear the whisper of a breeze as it moves through a dry shrub, the distant cry of a falcon circling high above on the thermals, the tiny, sandy scuttling of a lizard seeking the shade of a rock. It is a silence that makes the world feel vast, ancient, and profoundly peaceful. And in this silent, sun-drenched landscape grow the trees. They are the reason for our journey. The Boswellia sacra is not a majestic or beautiful tree in the conventional sense. It is a survivor. It appears almost primal, a tree from a forgotten age. It is often small, its trunk gnarled, its branches tangled and reaching, like the fingers of an old, wise man. The bark is its most peculiar feature, papery and pale, peeling away in thin, parchment-like scrolls, revealing a greenish, chlorophyll-rich layer beneath. It clings to life on the rocky slopes and the gravelly floor of the wadi, a testament to it is a tree that has learned to live on almost nothing. But within this humble, rugged exterior, It holds a treasure, a precious, milky white aromatic sap, the tears of the gods, some would call it, frankincense. Our guide in this world is a man of this land, a harvester. His name is lost to us, but his hands hold the knowledge of 100 generations. He is a man made of sinew and patience, his skin the color of the baked earth, his eyes narrowed against the glare, accustomed to noticing the smallest changes in the world around him. His village is a small, quiet settlement, a cluster of perhaps a dozen flat-roofed homes. It is nestled in a wider part of the wadi, a place where a deep hand-dug well provides the miracle of year-round water. The well is the heart of the village. It is where the women gather in the cool of the morning, their laughter and quiet conversation echoing slightly as they lower leather buckets on ropes. The rhythmic squeak of the wooden pulley, a familiar sound. It is the center of the community's shared life. The houses themselves are built of the land. They are made of sun-dried mud brick, or of stones gathered from the wadi floor, mortared with clay. The walls are thick, absorbing the heat of the day and keeping the interiors cool. The roofs are flat, constructed from a sturdy frame of palm logs, covered with woven palm matting, and then sealed with a thick layer of packed earth. These roofs are a vital part of the home on outdoor room for chores in the evening, and a place to sleep under the vast, starry sky during the hot, breathless nights. The harvester's day begins in this cool pre-dawn darkness. He rises from his sleeping mat on the roof, his movements slow and deliberate. He faces the east and performs his morning prayers as the sky begins its slow transformation from purple to pale grey. His wife is already moving about in the courtyard below. The first sound she makes is the gentle, rhythmic grinding of grain for the day's bread. The family's breakfast is simple and has been the same for centuries. A handful of sweet, sticky dates, their sugar a concentrated burst of energy for the morning's work. A small bowl of fresh, slightly sharp goat's milk. A piece of warm, unleavened flatbread, cooked on a clay griddle over a small, efficient fire fueled by dried animal dung. After this simple meal, the harvester gathers his tools. They are few and have a beauty in their simplicity. First, his water skin, made of cured goat hide, which he fills from a large clay pot of water drawn from the well that morning. Second, a woven basket, light but strong, made from goat hair or braided palm fiber. And third, his most important tool, the one that is the key to his craft, the mink. It is a small, curved knife, its blade shaped specifically for its purpose, with a sharpened edge and a squared-off tip. The wooden handle is worn smooth, polished by the grip of his own hand and his father's hand before him. He sets out on foot, his sandals making a soft, crunching sound on the gravelly path. He walks away from the village, further up the main wadi, and then turns into a smaller, subsidiary canyon. This is the land his family has the traditional right to harvest. He knows every tree here, every twist in the path, every rock formation. He navigates not by maps, but by an intimate, ingrained memory. The process of harvesting frankincense is a slow, patient, and deeply respectful ritual. It is a dialogue between the man and the tree. He approaches a familiar boswellia, a tree he has known since he was a boy. He greets it, in a sense, with a careful examination. He runs his hands over the papery bark, checks the health of its leaves, looks for signs that it is ready. He will not wound a tree that is too young, too old, or struggling. This is not just a practical matter. It is a spiritual one. The trees are sacred, the source of his people's unique wealth, and they must be honored. Selecting a spot on the main trunk, he takes out his meat. The first cut is a precise and gentle act. It is a scrape, more than a cut. He uses the edge of the blade to remove a small, plate-sized area of the rough outer bark. Then, with the corner of the knife, he makes a shallow incision into the exposed inner bark. It is only a few inches long. He does not cut deep enough to harm the tree's vital systems. Almost immediately, the tree responds. A thick, milky white sap, like a string of pearls, begins to well up from the cut. These are the first tears. The air is instantly filled with the fresh, balsamic, citrus and pine fragrance of the resin. This initial flow of sap is part of the tree's healing process, a way to seal the wound. The harvester knows that this first resin, the scoba, is not the purest. It is a cleansing. He will leave it. He allows it to trickle slowly down the bark in the hot, dry air, where it will begin to coagulate. He then moves on, walking through the silent, sun-drenched canyon from one tree to the next. Repeating this careful, ritualistic wounding, he works without haste, his movements economical and sure. His true work will not begin for another 2 weeks. During this time, he will return to the village, perhaps tending to the family's small herd of goats, or mending his tools. The sun and the wind will be doing their part, slowly hardening those first tears on the trees. When he returns to that first tree after 2 weeks have passed, he finds the initial flow of sap has hardened into a dark, brittle, and worthless crust. He carefully scrapes this off with his minguff and lets it fall to the ground. The wound is now clean. He then makes a second, slightly deeper incision in the very same spot. Again, the tree weeps its fragrant tears, but this time the sap that emerges is different. It is clearer, more translucent, and more aromatic. This is the precious resin. He watches it well up, a string of milky pearls catching the intense desert light. But still, he does not collect it. He is a man of immense patience. He knows the best resin is that which hardens slowly on the tree itself. He leaves again. He will visit a third time, perhaps making one more cut to stimulate a final, even richer flow. It is a slow conversation, this drawing out of the tree's spirit. Finally, after another week or 2 of waiting, he returns for the harvest. The resin from the second and third cuttings has now coagulated into beautiful, pearlescent droplets, clinging to the bark like jewels. They are the color of pale amber, of moonlight. Now, the harvester uses the squared-off tip of his mingoff to gently pry these hardened tears from the tree. They come away with a satisfying, soft click, and he lets them fall into the palm of his other hand before placing them carefully into his basket. He works his way up the trunk, collecting all the hardened droplets. He will repeat this process with all the trees he has tapped. By the time the sun is beginning its descent, casting long, cool, blue shadows across the wadi, his basket will be partially full. It is not heavy, but its contents are worth a fortune in the distant markets of Rome, Egypt, and Persia. The walk back to the village is peaceful. The heat of the day is fading, and a gentle breeze picks up. Back in the stone-paved courtyard of his home, the final stage of the work begins. The harvested resin is carefully poured out onto clean, woven mats. Now, the whole family may participate in the sorting. It is a quiet, communal task, often performed in the cool of the evening. With nimble fingers, they sort the frankincense, tiers by size, purity, and color. The largest, purest, and most translucent pieces, the whitish and silvery tiers, are the highest grade. These are destined for the grandest temples and the wealthiest clients. The smaller tiers, yellowish in color, form the next grade. Finally, the scrapings and the pieces contaminated with small bits of bark are sorted into the lowest grades, perhaps to be used for domestic medicine or simple, everyday incense. This is the rhythm of the harvester's life. It is governed by the sun, the seasons, and the slow, generous weeping of the sacred trees. It is a life of walking, waiting, and watching. A life of quiet dignity and profound ancient skill at the very beginning of a long road that will carry the fragrance of this secret land to the far corners of the known world. The frankincense, tears, sorted and bagged in the quiet courtyards of southern Arabia, were now ready for their great journey. But between this fragrant land and the wealthy, waiting markets of Egypt, the Levant, and the Roman Empire, lay one of the most formidable obstacles on earth. The great Arabian desert, a vast, silent ocean of sand and rock, a place of shimmering heat and profound emptiness. To transport a treasure so light and so valuable across such a wilderness was a challenge of immense proportions. It required more than just courage. It required a unique and intimate genius for survival. This genius belonged to a people who rose from the desert itself. They were a nomadic tribe who, through patience, ingenuity, and a deep understanding of their environment, became the undisputed masters of the desert road. They were the Nabateans. Their story is not one of sudden conquests or bloody battles. It is a story of quiet mastery, of a slow and deliberate conquest, not of people, but of the desert itself. For centuries they had lived as nomads, moving with their flocks, learning the secret language of the arid lands. They knew the hidden paths that wound through impassable mountains. They knew how to read the stars to navigate the featureless plains. They knew where to find the rare, hidden springs of water, the lifeblood of any desert traveler. The early frankincense trade was a perilous affair, with small caravans hugging the coast or risking the dangers of the Red Sea. The Nabateans saw an opportunity. They knew that the key to controlling the trade was to create a safe, reliable, and direct route straight through the heart of the desert. To do this, they had to solve the single greatest problem, and so began their quiet war against thirst, a campaign of patient, brilliant engineering that would become the foundation of their kingdom. They began to create a secret network of water sources, a lifeline known only to them. They did not build great, visible aqueducts. They carved. Imagine a small team of Nabatean men working in a secluded, rocky canyon somewhere along the proposed trade route. They have identified a place where the rock is soft sandstone, and where the natural contours of the land would channel the water from a rare but powerful flash flood. Here, with simple iron tools, they begin to carve. The work is slow, hot, and laborious. They chip away at the rock, creating an opening, and then hollowing out a great cavernous space inside the cliff face or beneath the ground. They carve steps leading down into the darkness. The interior is plastered with a waterproof lime mortar, a technology they create small channels on the rock face above, designed to catch every precious drop of rainfall and guide it down into the mouth of the sea. They created thousands of these hidden reservoirs along their routes. To any outsider, the desert would look as barren as ever, but the Nabateans, in their minds, saw a map of hidden life. They knew that every 20 miles or so there was a secret source of cool, clean water, safely stored away from the evaporating sun, waiting for their caravans. This network was their most guarded secret and their most powerful weapon. It allowed them to move across the desert with a speed and security that no one else could match. With this network in place, they could organize the great frankincense caravans. The process was a masterpiece of logistics. It would begin near the collection points in the south. Here, for several weeks, hundreds, sometimes thousands, of camels would be gathered. These were the ships of the desert dromedaries, perfectly adapted to the harsh environment. You might imagine the scene. The low, rumbling groan of the camels, the shouts of the cameleers, the careful loading of the precious cargo. The frankincense was sealed in leather or palm fiber bags to protect its fragrance. These bags were then loaded onto the camels' backs, balanced perfectly for the long journey. Guards were hired, rugged men, armed with swords and bows, to protect the caravan from raiding tribes. Finally, the day of departure would come. The caravan master would give the signal, and the great, slow-moving river of animals and people would begin its journey north. The pace of the caravan was the pace of a walking camel, a slow, steady, and rhythmic sway. 2 or 3 miles an hour, the sound of the journey was a gentle symphony of the desert. The soft, padding footfalls of thousands of camel feet on the sand, the steady, soporific clinking of small bells hung around the led camels' necks, the soft creak of leather saddles and harnesses, the low murmur of men's voices. They travelled in the cooler hours, starting before dawn and walking until the midday sun became too fierce. During the crushing heat of the afternoon, they would rest. The camels would be made to kneel, and the men would erect simple tents or find what little shade they could against a rock face. They would drink sparingly from their water skins and eat a simple meal of dates, dried meat, and hard bread. Then, as the afternoon sun began to lose its power, they would begin again, often walking into the evening. The nights in the desert were magical. As the last light of the sun faded, the sky would transform into a vast black dome, so clear and so free of haze that the stars seemed close enough to touch. The Milky Way was a brilliant, shimmering band across the heavens. The men would navigate by these familiar stars, their celestial map unchanging and reliable. At night, they would make camp. The camels would be unloaded and allowed to graze on the sparse desert shrubs. Small fires would be lit, their flames flickering in the darkness. The men would gather around them, sharing a meal, telling stories, their voices low in the immense silence of the desert. The fragrance of the frankincense they were carrying would sometimes hang faintly in the air, a reminder of their valuable cargo. Day after day, week after week, this rhythm would continue. It was a life of monotony, of endurance, but also of a strange, quiet beauty. The caravan moved as a single, self-contained organism, a fragile island of life, moving slowly across a sea of sand. Their journey was made possible by the secret chain of Nabotean cities, where they would stop to replenish their water, their camels drinking deeply of the cool, stored water before continuing their trek. The wealth that flowed from this meticulously controlled trade was staggering, and this wealth needed a home. It needed a capital city, a secure terminus where the goods could be taxed, traded, and stored. The Nabateans built this city in a place as secret and protected as theirs. They built Petra. To approach Petra is to understand why it was the perfect capital for a kingdom built on secrecy. You do not see the city from afar, you discover it. The main entrance is through the sick, a narrow, winding canyon that twists for nearly a mile between towering sandstone cliffs. Imagine walking through the sick. The path is cool and shaded, a dramatic change from the open desert. The cliffs, hundreds of feet high, almost touch overhead, leaving only a sliver of sky visible. The silence here is deep and reverent, your footsteps echoing softly against the rock. The walls of the canyon are a swirling masterpiece of color, orange, yellow, and violet, the natural bands of the sandstone. After walking through this long, narrow passage, you emerge into the light, and the sight is one that stops the heart. Carved directly from the face of a rose-red cliff is a magnificent two-story facade with columns, friezes, and statues. This is the Alcazna, the treasury. The city of Petra is a city carved from silence and stone. Its greatest buildings, its tombs, its temples, its public halls were not built, but excavated from the living rock. This was the ultimate expression of the Nabatean genius. They did not impose their architecture on the landscape. they merged it with the landscape. You can almost feel the patient labor involved, the slow chipping away of the rock by masons, year after year, to reveal the grand structures hidden within. Petra became the wealthy, secure heart of the frankincense trade. Here, the great caravans would end their long journey. The frankincense would be unloaded, weighed, taxed, and stored in cool, rock-cut chambers before being sold to the merchants, who would take it on the final leg of its journey to the ports of the Mediterranean. The wealth that this generated is written in the city's spectacular funerary monuments, each one a testament to a rich merchant or a powerful king. The Nabutians were the quiet masters of the desert. Their kingdom was not built on military might, but on the patient application of knowledge, on the mastery of water, and on the slow, rhythmic pace of the camel caravan. They carved a civilization from the rock and built an empire on the fragrance of a single, sacred tree. From the rock-carved treasury of Petra, the frankincense tears, now weighed, taxed, and traded, began the final stage of their journey. They were loaded onto new caravans or onto ships at the port of Gaza, destined for the great centers of the ancient world, the fertile Nile Valley of Egypt, the marble cities of the Roman Empire, and the sacred hills of Judea. The immense value of this simple resin, the reason kingdoms were built upon it, was not just in its pleasant fragrance. To the people of the ancient world, frankincense was not a luxury. It was a necessity. It was the scent of the sacred. Its fragrant smoke was the very medium of communication between the mortal and the divine. Imagine yourself standing in a vast, dimly lit temple hall. The air is heavy and cool. Massive stone columns, carved with strange and beautiful symbols, rise up into the darkness like a forest of stone. A priest, dressed in pure white linen, stands before a golden statue of a god. In his hand is a censer, a vessel for burning incense. He places a few pale, translucent tears of frankincense onto the hot coals within it. Immediately, a thick, white, sweet-smelling smoke begins to rise. It does not dissipate quickly in the still air. It curls upwards in a slow, deliberate column, a visible prayer ascending towards the heavens. The scent fills the space, a perfume that is clean, balsamic, with notes of pine and citrus. This aroma was believed to do many things. It purified the sacred space, driving away any unseen malevolent forces. It was thought to please the senses of the gods, to draw their attention and their favor, and it created an atmosphere, a threshold between the mundane world outside and the holy world within. To breathe the scent of frankincense was to breathe the very air of the divine. Nowhere was this belief more deeply ingrained than in ancient Egypt. For the Egyptians, frankincense was the fragrance of life itself, both here and in the hereafter. It was considered the sweat of the gods, fallen to earth. The great pharaohs, who were themselves seen as gods, craved it. The female pharaoh Hatshepsut, in the 15th century BC, launched one of the most famous expeditions in ancient history. She sent a fleet of 5 great ships south on the Red Sea on a perilous journey to the semi-mythical land of Punt, believed to be the ancient source of frankincense and myrrh. The reliefs carved on the walls of her temple, Adir el-Bari, tell the story of this journey. We see the Egyptian sailors trading with the people of Punt, and we see them returning not just with sacks of resin, but with living frankincense trees, their root balls contained in heavy baskets. Hatshepsut attempted to create her own supply, to plant a divine garden for the god Amenra right there in Egypt. This shows how vital, how central this fragrance was to the Egyptian worldview. In the daily rituals of the great temples at Karnak and Luxor, vast quantities of frankincense were burned. At sunrise, a priest would break the clay seal on the door of the god's inner shrine, and the first offering of the day would be incense, to awaken the deity in a cloud of pleasing aroma. But it was in the Egyptian obsession with the afterlife that frankincense found its most profound role. The process of mummification was not just a physical preservation. It was a spiritual and aromatic one. After the internal organs were removed, the body cavity was washed and cleansed, and then packed with fragrant materials. With frankincense being one of the most important, they believed that to journey into the underworld, the Duator, and to stand before the god Osiris for judgment, one's body must be pure and must smell divine. The imperishable nature of the resin, its association with the gods, was thought to grant a form of immortality to the deceased, helping to preserve their body for the return of their soul. Their Ka and Ba. In the tombs of pharaohs like Tutankhamun, archaeologists found large quantities of frankincense resin, still faintly aromatic after more than 3,000 years. Left as offerings to sustain the king in the next life, it was the perfume of eternity. This idea of frankincense as a sacred offering reserved for a deity was also central to the traditions of ancient Israel. In the book of Exodus, specific instructions are given by God to Moses for the creation of a holy incense, the ketoret, to be burned on a special golden altar in the tabernacle, and later, in the great temple of Jerusalem, the recipe was precise and sacred. It contained frankincense, listed as lavona in Hebrew, alongside other precious spices like stacte, oniha. This mixture was considered so holy that it was forbidden for any person to replicate it for their own personal use. It was exclusively for God. Its smoke, rising from the golden altar in the holy place, was a constant, fragrant symbol of the prayers of the people of Israel ascending to heaven. Later, in the Christian tradition, the significance of frankincense was sealed in the story of the Nativity. The Magi, the wise men from the east, arrived bearing 3 gifts for the infant Jesus: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Gold symbolized his kingship, myrrh, an embalming resin, foreshadowed his death, and frankincense, the offering burned for a deity in the temple, was a direct acknowledgement of his divinity. It was a gift fit for a god. The demand for frankincense reached its absolute peak in the Roman Empire. The Romans were voracious consumers of luxury, and no scent was more luxurious or held higher status than frankincense. It was burned in temples before the statues of Jupiter, Juno, and the other gods of the Roman pantheon. It was used in grand public ceremonies, like the triumphs held for victorious generals, where censers would be carried through the streets of Rome, filling the air with perfumed smoke. It was also a crucial part of Roman funerals. To honor a prominent citizen, the family would burn enormous quantities of the resin during the funeral procession and at the pyre. It was a display of both piety and immense wealth. The historian Pliny the Elder complained bitterly about the sheer amount of frankincense being wasted on the dead. It is famously recorded that the Emperor Nero, at the funeral of his wife Poppaea in 65 AD, burned an amount of frankincense and other spices that exceeded an entire year's production from Arabia. Whether this is an exaggeration or not, it speaks to the scale of its consumption. With such immense demand, and with its source so remote and mysterious, it is no wonder that strange legends grew up around the land where it was harvested. The Greek historian Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BC, recorded the stories told by traders. He wrote that the frankincense trees of southern Arabia were fiercely guarded by small winged serpents of various colors. He claimed that the harvesters could only collect the resin after driving these serpents from the trees by burning the smoke of another aromatic resin. We should not imagine this as a factual report. It is a myth, a story born of the desire to protect a trade secret. The traders who brought the frankincense north had every reason to make its acquisition sound as dangerous and as difficult as possible. It added to the mystique and it certainly added to the price. These tailies of flying snakes guarding perfumed trees only enhanced the otherworldly allure of frankincense. From the quiet wadis of Dhofar to the bustling heart of Rome, the journey of this simple tree resin was a journey into the spiritual heart of the ancient world. It was the scent of prayer, the perfume of power, and the fragrance of eternity. It was a bridge between the earth and the heavens, a tangible link between humanity and its gods, all carried on a column of sweet, white smoke. The immense demand for frankincense in the temples of Egypt, the synagogues of Judea, and the villas of Rome created a river of wealth that flowed out of southern Arabia. This river, like any other, had its powerful currents and its quiet eddies. It created a world of stark contrasts. A world where the hardship of many fueled the unimaginable luxury of a few. To complete our journey, we must now look at the two opposite ends of this human chain. The life of the man who walked with the camels, and the life of the merchant who waited for them in his palace of stone. Let us return to the desert, to the great caravan moving slowly north. Our focus is now on a single man. He is not a Nabatean noble, nor a wealthy merchant. He is a man of the desert, hired for his skill, his endurance, and his knowledge of the animals. His day begins in the deep, cold blackness, hours before the sun will rise. The stars are his ceiling. He is awakened not by a sound, but by a change in the air, a deep, ingrained instinct that tells him it is time to move. He rises from his simple wool blanket, his body stiff from the cold ground. The first task is to stoke the embers of the previous night's fire, to make a small pot of bitter, gritty coffee, or to chew on a few hard dates to break his fast. His world is one of physical realities. The most important reality is his camel. He approaches the great beast in the darkness. It is kneeling on the sand, its expression one of serene indifference. He speaks to it in low, murmuring tones, a language of commands and reassurances passed down through generations. The camel's smell is a constant in his life, a dry, musky, not unpleasant scent. The work of loading the camel is laborious. The bales of frankincense are heavy. He must lift them, along with supplies of water and food, and secure them with a complex network of leather straps and ropes. The camel groans in protest, a deep, guttural sound from its throat. Finally, the animal is loaded, and the cameleer must coax it to its feet. As the first light of dawn touches the sky, the caravan begins to move. The cameleer does not ride his camel. To ride would be a luxury, and the animals are too precious, laden as they are with valuable cargo. He walks. He walks beside his camel, his hand often resting on its neck, his feet shod in simple leather sandals, treading the same path his ancestors walked. His day is a long, slow rhythm of walking. The sun climbs, and the heat intensifies. The landscape is vast, monotonous, and hypnotizing. The endless expanse of sand and rock, the shimmering heat haze, the immense, empty sky. To survive this, he must enter a state of quiet mindfulness, noticing everything and thinking about very little. He watches the gait of his camel, looking for any sign of a limp or fatigue. He observes the position of the sun. He notes the texture of the sand, a skill that helps him avoid softer patches where a camel might founder. His sensory world is simple and intense. The feeling of the hot sun on his head and the back of his neck, shielded only by a piece of cloth. The taste of dust in his mouth, a taste he has known his life. The constant, soft padding of the camel's feet, a sound so familiar it is like his own heartbeat. The creak of the leather saddle. Water is his most precious commodity. He drinks from his water skin sparingly, a few sips of lukewarm, leathery-tasting water to wet his throat. His food is dates, hard bread, and perhaps a piece of dried, salted meat. There is no comfort here, only sustenance. The camelier's life is one of immense loneliness, yet he is never truly alone. He is part of the community of the caravan. In the evenings, when they make camp around a small fire, the men share their food and their stories. They speak of their families, of past journeys, of the dangers of the road. These dangers are a constant, quiet presence, not just raiding parties, but the more common perils of the desert. A sudden sandstorm that can blot out the sun and erase the path, a camel that goes lame, a cistern that is found to be unexpectedly dry. These are not dramatic events, but quiet, life-threatening crises that are met with the stoic patience and shared ingenuity of the group. For weeks, sometimes months, this is his entire world, a slow-moving line of life between a vast earth and a vast sky. His reward is his pay, enough to support his family until the next caravan. His life is one of profound hardship, endurance, and a simple, unadorned dignity. Now, let us leave the camelier in the shimmering heat of the desert and travel to his destination. Let us step into a courtyard house in the city of Petra. Here lives the wealthy Nabotean merchant who has financed the caravan and who will profit from its cargo. His day also begins at dawn, but in a very different way. He awakens not on the hard ground, but in a comfortable bed, on soft woolen mats. The room is cool, carved in part from the living rock of the hillside, insulated from the desert heat. A servant enters silently, bringing a bowl of cool water for washing and a cup of wine sweetened with honey. The merchant's house is a haven of peace and luxury. It is built around a central open-air courtyard. In the center of the courtyard, a small fountain bubbles, the sound of its splashing water, a constant, soothing music, and a flagrant display of wealth in this arid land. Around the fountain is a small, irrigated garden, where fig trees, pomegranates, and fragrant flowers grow, their scent perfuming the air. The rooms of the house opened onto this courtyard through shaded porticos, their columns carved with elegant designs. The merchant's day is not one of physical labor. It is a day of information, connection, and quiet negotiation. He spends his morning in a shaded room, reclining on plush cushions. Scribes read him reports, delivered by runners news from the port at Gaza, price fluctuations in Rome, intelligence about rival merchants. His work is to manage the intricate web of his business. Later, other merchants may visit. They sit with him in the courtyard, by the fountain. Servants bring them trays of food, bowls of olives, fresh cheese, figs, nuts, and slices of roasted meat. They sip cool wine from painted ceramic cups imported from Greece or Italy. Their negotiations are quiet, polite, and shrewd. They discuss the price of the incoming frankincense. They arrange for its onward journey. They form partnerships and alliances. Their words are soft, but they move fortunes across the world. The merchant's sensory world is one of cultivated pleasure. The smell is of the flowers in his garden, of the expensive perfume he wears, of the incense he burns in a small brazier not for a god, but for his own enjoyment. The sound is the gentle splash of his fountain and the murmur of quiet conversation. The taste is of fine food and cooled wine. The feeling is of cool, smooth stone under his bare feet, and fine, dyed linen on his skin. His wealth is visible everywhere, in the intricate mosaics on his floors, in the colorful frescoes painted on his walls, in the fine jewelry worn by his wife and daughters. His family lives a life of complete insulation from the hardships of the desert. Their world is this cool, fragrant, and beautiful house and the protected rock-carved streets of their city. The camelier and the merchant may never meet. They are two ends of a chain, living in realities that are worlds apart. and yet their lives are inextricably linked. The merchant's luxurious existence, his entire fortune, depends entirely on the endurance and skill of the anonymous cameleer who walks his cargo across the desert. And the camelier's livelihood, his ability to feed his family, depends on the merchant's capital, connections, and enterprise. One man walks the earth, his face to the sun and the wind. The other sits in a shaded paradise carved from the earth. Both are essential links in the long, fragrant, and immensely profitable chain that carried the tears of a sacred tree from a silent wadi in Arabia to the altars of the gods and the palaces of the great Incense Road, that artery of commerce carved through the desert by the Nabutians, was a phenomenon created by the world's thirst for a single, holy fragrance. The prophets from Frankincense paved the way, paved the guards, and dug the life-saving cisterns. It was the undisputed king of the root, but a king does not travel alone. He moves with his court, and so it was with the frankincense. Its immense value created a secure pathway, a moving sanctuary of commerce, upon which other precious goods, other rare and coveted scents, could safely journey. The caravan that arrived in the rock-carved city of Petra was fragrant not just with the clean, ethereal scent of frankincense, but with a whole orchestra of other aromas, an olfactory map of the ancient world. To truly understand the road, we must pause and appreciate its other treasures. Let us first turn our attention to frankincense's closest companion, a resin that was its shadow, its twin, its opposite. This was myrrh, the myrrh tree. Its scientific name, Comifera myrrha, often grew in the same unforgiving landscapes as the bog. It thrived in the same harsh, sun-scorched earth of southern Arabia and the Horn of Africa, but where the frankincense tree had a certain pale, papery grace, the myrrh tree was a study in rugged endurance. It is a smaller, thornier, more knotty-looking tree, its branches sharp and tangled. It has the appearance of a grizzled, battle-scarred soldier, where the frankincense tree might be a serene priest. The harvesting of its resin followed a similar pattern of patient wounding and waiting, but the result was dramatically different. The harvester would approach the myrrh tree with his knife, but the bark was often tougher, requiring a firmer hand. When the incision was made, the tree would bleed, and it truly looked like bleeding. The resin that welled up was not a milky white tear, but a thick, viscous, reddish-brown sap, the color of dark, rich blood. It flowed more readily than frankincense, oozing down the bark in thick, heavy gouts and globules. When it hardened in the hot desert air, it did not form neat, pearly tears, but irregular, rough-surfaced, reddish-black lumps. They looked like dark, mysterious stones. The scent of myrrh was a world away from the bright, celestial aroma of frankincense. To smell myrrh is to smell the earth itself. Its fragrance is deep, warm, and profoundly bitter. There is a clean, sharp, almost medicinal quality to it, a scent that speaks not of prayer and the heavens, but of healing, of preservation, and of the rich, dark soil. While frankincense was the scent of the gods, myrrh was the great fragrance of humanity's struggle against decay and pain. Its primary use across the ancient world was medicinal. In the learned halls of Alexandria, in the apothecary shops of Rome, physicians and healers valued it above almost any other substance. Let us imagine the workshop of one such physician. It is a quiet, orderly room, lined with shelves holding clay jars and glass vials. The physician takes a handful of the dark, reddish lumps of myrrh and places them into a heavy mortar of basalt stone. With a pestle, he begins to grind. It is a slow, rhythmic, and patient task. Thump, scrape, thump, scrape. The hard resin resists at first, but slowly it begins to break down. A fine reddish-brown powder forms, and the air fills with that distinctive, sharp, and purifying scent. This powder was a cornerstone of ancient medicine. It was known to be a powerful antiseptic and a potent anti-inflammatory. A pinch of myrrh powder might be mixed with wine and honey to create a tonic for coughs and ailments of the chest. It could be blended with oil and other herbs to create a thick sap to be spread upon wounds to prevent infection and encourage healing. Roman soldiers would sometimes carry it with them on campaign for this very purpose. It was also used in dentistry, as a powder to clean the teeth, or as a tincture to soothe the gums. And just like frankincense, myrrh was essential in the elaborate funereal rites of Egypt. It was a key ingredient in the mummification process, but for a very practical reason. Its powerful antibacterial and antifungal properties were crucial in halting the natural process of decomposition. While frankincense was intended to make the deceased smell like a god for their journey in the afterlife, myrrh was there to ensure that the physical body remained as intact as possible, a worthy vessel for the soul's eventual return. The two resins were a perfect partnership, one for the spirit, one for the flesh. So, the great caravans moving north were laden not only with bags of pale frankincense, tears, but also with heavy sacks of these dark, earthy myrrh nodules, a cargo destined for the healers, physicians, and embalmers of the Mediterranean world. But the fragrant wealth of the Incense Road was not limited to the resins of Arabia. The coastal ports of southern Arabia, thriving cities like the famous harbour of Cana, were a vital crossroads. Here, the desert road met the ancient sea lanes of the Indian Ocean, and a whole new world of scent and flavour was added to the caravans. Imagine a dhow, a sturdy wooden ship with a great triangular lateen sail, gliding into the harbour at Cana. Its timbers are dark from the sea salt and the sun. It has just completed a journey of thousands of miles, a journey guided by the predictable cycle of the monsoon winds, which blew sailors from India to Arabia in the winter and would blow them back home in the summer. This ship does not carry resin. Its hold is filled with the even more exotic and even more valuable treasures of the Far East. The arrival of such a ship would be an occasion of quiet, professional activity. In the cool, dark interiors of the great waterfront warehouses, the cargo would be unloaded, and with it would come a wave of new aromas, scents utterly foreign to the Arabian desert. The sharp, pungent, almost hot fragrance of black pepper from the Malabar coast of India, so valued in Rome it was counted out peppercorn by peppercorn, and sometimes used as currency itself. From another set of sacks comes the sweet, warm, and comforting scent of cinnamon bark, harvested in Sri Lanka. It was transported in the form of delicate, rolled-up quills, their fragrance evoking warmth and luxury. Alongside it might be its cousin, cassia, with a similar but bolder, less nuanced aroma. And from the most precious chests, opened with great care, would come the scents of the fabled Spice Islands, the Moluccas, on the other side of the world, the intensely aromatic, piercing, and almost medicinal scent of cloves, the tiny, dried flower buds of a tree that grew nowhere else, and the warm, nutty, and slightly sweet fragrance of nutmeg and its lacy covering, mace. To the people of the time, these were almost magical substances, their origins shrouded in mystery, their value astronomical. In the port of Cana, a slow, methodical, and vital business took place. This was the great exchange, the point where goods from the sea were prepared for their journey on the land. In the warehouses, owned by wealthy South Arabian merchants, the spices were carefully inspected. Any that were damaged by sea water or mold were discarded. The rest was weighed with meticulous care on heavy bronze-balanced scales. Scribes, sitting cross-legged on mats, would record every transaction on shards of pottery called a strocker, their styluses making soft scratching sounds. These were the receipts, the inventory lists, the ledgers of this global trade. Taxes would be levied by the port authorities, a significant source of the local kingdom's wealth. Then came the spices, having arrived in sea chests or flimsy sacks, were transferred into new containers, rugged and durable enough for the desert. Strong leather bags, or wooden chests bound with iron, would be filled with the precious cargo and then carefully sealed to protect the contents from the sun and the sand. Here, in the courtyards of the fondoks, or inns, new caravans would be formed. Camels would be loaded not just with frankincense and myrrh, but with pepper, cinnamon, and cloves. The value of these caravans was now exponentially higher. More guards would be hired. More water and supplies would be calculated and loaded. The Incense Road had now truly become the Spice Road. It was a single, great artery, pumping the most valuable botanical goods in the world from the east towards the insatiable markets of the west. The slow, swaying journey across the desert was now a moving treasure chest of global commerce, a river of scent and flavor, its value almost beyond imagining. The quiet patience of the cameleer was now responsible for a cargo that represented the furthest reaches of the known world, all making its slow, steady way towards Petra. Our caravan, laden with the perfumed treasures of Arabia and the East, has finally reached the great Nabatean capital of Petra. But this is not the end of the road. Here, in the city's vast warehouses, the frankincense, myrrh, and spices are sold to new merchants, men who look not to the desert but to the sea. The goods are packed once more, loaded onto different caravans for the shorter journey to the bustling ports of the Levant. Here, the treasures are transferred from the backs of camels to the holds of broad-beamed Roman merchant ships. And so they begin the final leg of their journey, a slow voyage across the deep blue waters of the Mediterranean. They are destined for the heart of the world, the center of power, wealth, and consumption. They are destined for Rome. Imagine a busy Roman port, like Puteoli on the Bay of Naples, or the great port of Ostia at the mouth of the Tiber. A merchant ship has just arrived. It is guided to a stone quay, and Roman dockworkers begin the laborious task of unloading its precious cargo. Officials, known as publicani, stand by with their wax tablets and styluses. These are the tax collectors. Every sack of pepper, every chest of cinnamon, every bag of frankincense and myrrh is meticulously weighed and inspected. A hefty import tax, a significant source of revenue for the Roman state, is levied before the goods are even allowed to enter the city. Once cleared, the fragrant cargo is taken to the great warehouses, and from there it is sold to the wholesalers and shopkeepers, who will distribute it throughout the city and the empire. It is here, in the workshops of Rome, that these raw materials are transformed into the final products of daily life, medicine and luxury. Let us first step into the quiet, aromatic world of a Roman apothecary, a pharmacopoeia. His shop, or taberna, is a small, often dark space, opening onto a busy street. The air inside is cool and pungent, with a complex blend of medicinal smells. The walls are lined with shelves, neatly stacked with clay amphorae and glass jars, each bearing a small label, epitatum, identifying its contents. Lavona, Mira, Pipernic. The pharmacist himself is a man of quiet skill and learning. He is part physician, part herbalist, part chemist. His work is slow, precise, and methodical. You might see him at his heavy stone work table, a mortar and pestle in his hands. He takes a few tears of frankincense. In ancient Rome, it was not only a sacred perfume, but also a respected medicine. The physician Galen and the writer Pliny the Elder both wrote of its uses. It was believed to be an antidote to certain poisons, a treatment for digestive ailments, and a powerful anti-inflammatory. The pharmacist places the resin tears in the mortar and begins to grind. The sound is a soft, gritty, rhythmic crunching. He works patiently, reducing the hard resin to a fine, whitish, aromatic powder. This powder might be mixed into a medicinal wine or blended with other ingredients to form a pill. Or it could be used in a salve. Next, he might take the dark, reddish lumps of myrrh. He grinds these too, the sharp, bitter scent filling his workshop. This powder, he knows, is a powerful antiseptic. A customer might come in, a soldier perhaps, with a wound from his training. The pharmacist would carefully clean the wound and then apply a thick salve made of myrrh powder mixed with honey and olive oil. He would explain that this would keep the wound from festering and help it to heal cleanly. Myrrh was the scent of preservation, both for the living and the dead. Now let us leave the quiet, medicinal world of the apothecary and walk down the street to a different kind of workshop, that of the unguarded. Here, the scents are not medicinal, but luxurious, designed for pleasure and status. The perfumer's workshop is a place of slow alchemy. The goal is to capture the fleeting soul of a scent and bind it into an oil that can be worn on the skin. The primary technique used was a slow, patient process of infusion. The perfumer would fill large, shallow ceramic basins with a fine, neutral oil. Perhaps oil from the moringa tree, known as ben oil, or the best quality olive oil. He would then take the raw ingredients. He might gently crush some frankincense and myrrh tears, and mix them with other fragrant materials: cinnamon bark, cardamom pods, dried rose petals. This mixture would be submerged in the basin of oil. The basin would then be placed over a very low heat, perhaps in a bed of warm ashes from a fire, for several days. It could never be allowed to get too hot, lest it cook the fragrances and destroy them. Day after day, the perfumer would gently stir the mixture. Slowly, patiently, the aromatic molecules from the resins and spices would leave their solid form and dissolve into the oil. After many days, the oil would be saturated with the scent. It would then be carefully strained through fine linen cloth multiple times to remove all the solid matter, leaving behind only the clear, intensely fragrant, perfumed oil. The skill of the unguardarius was in the blending. He was like a composer, understanding which scents were top notes, which were base notes, and how to combine them to create a complex and desirable fragrance. Frankincense provided a bright, sacred high note, while myrrh could provide a warm, bitter, and long-lasting foundation. This finished perfume, a substance of immense luxury, would be decanted into small, beautiful containers. These could be delicate, long-necked vials of colored glass, called or exquisitely carved little pots made of alabaster, a stone believed to be the best for preserving the purity of a perfume. A wealthy Roman woman, a matron, would not consider her preparations for the day complete without anointing her hair and skin with such a perfume. The demand for these products for medicine, for religious rites, for personal luxury was and it came at a staggering cost. Roman moralists and politicians complained endlessly about the economic consequences of this addiction to fragrance. Pliny the Elder, in his great work, Natural History, lamented that there was no year in which India, the Saray, and the Arabian Peninsula do not drain the Roman Empire of 100 million. It was a quiet, constant hemorrhage of the empire's silver and gold, flowing eastward in exchange for what he considered effeminate luxuries. He complained that these spices and perfumes, once reserved for the gods, were now being used to scent even the soles of people's feet. This was not just the grumbling of a conservative old man. It was a real economic concern. The balance of trade was massively skewed. The East had little interest in Roman export goods, but Rome had an insatiable appetite for the products of the East. This created a class of incredibly wealthy Roman businessmen, the negotiators, who specialized in this import trade, their fortunes built on the desire for a pleasant scent. And so, the journey ends here, in the bustling, scent-obsessed streets of Rome. A simple resin tear, collected by a patient harvester in a silent wadi, has passed through the hands of cameleers, merchants, tax collectors, pharmacists, and perfumers. Its value has multiplied 1,000-fold. It has been transformed from a sacred offering into a medicine, a luxury, a status symbol, and even a source of economic anxiety for the most powerful empire on earth. The insatiable desire of this one city created a demand that was felt all the way back down the long sandy road, providing the endless fuel for the great frankincense trade. The river of Roman silver, flowing endlessly eastward to purchase the scents of Arabia and India, created a world of profound contrasts. This immense wealth, generated by the desire for a fleeting aroma, was not distributed evenly along the great Incense Road. It pooled in certain places, and for certain people. To complete our journey, we must now turn our gaze back from the glittering consumer in Rome to the two human pillars upon whom this entire enterprise rested. We will examine the two opposite ends of the trade route's human chain. The life of the man who walked with the camels, and the life of the merchant who waited for them in his palace of stone. Let us return to the heart of the desert, to the great caravan moving slowly north. Our focus is now on a single man, a cameleer. He is not a Nabatean noble, nor a wealthy merchant. He is a man of the desert, perhaps from a smaller tribe, hired for his skill, his endurance, and his intimate knowledge of the animals. His day begins in the deep, cold blackness of the desert night, hours before the sun will rise. The stars are his ceiling, a brilliant, silent canopy. He is awakened not by an alarm, but by a change in the air, a deep, ingrained instinct that tells him it is time to move. He rises from his simple wool blanket laid upon the sand, his body stiff from the cold ground. The first task is to stoke the embers of the previous night's small fire, to make a pot of bitter, gritty coffee, or to chew on a few hard dates to break his fast. The quiet before the dawn is his own. His world is one of intense physical realities. The most important reality is his camel. He approaches the great beast in the darkness. It is kneeling on the sand, its long-lashed eyes seemingly closed, its breath visible as a faint mist in the cold air. He speaks to it in low, murmuring tones, a language of commands and reassurances passed down through generations. The camel's smell is a constant in his life, a dry, musky, not unpleasant scent of animal and dust. The work of loading the camel is a slow, methodical ritual performed in the half-light. The bales of frankincense, myrrh, and spices are heavy. He must hoist them, along with the heavy waterskins and his own meagre supplies, and secure them with a complex network of leather straps and coarse ropes. He knows his camel's temperament, when to pull, when to soothe. The animal groans in protest, a deep, guttural sound from its throat. Finally, the camel is loaded, and the cameleer must coax it to its feet, the great beast rising in a series of awkward, gangly movements. As the first light of dawn spills across the horizon, the caravan begins to move. The cameleer does not ride his camel. To ride would be a luxury reserved for the caravan master or a wealthy traveler. The animals are beasts of burden, and he is their guardian. So he walks. He walks beside his camel, his hand often resting on its neck, his feet shod in simple leather sandals, treading the same sandy path his ancestors walked. His day unfolds as a long, slow rhythm of walking. The sun climbs the sky, and the heat intensifies, becoming a physical weight. The landscape is vast, monotonous and hypnotizing. The endless expanse of sand dunes, or the featureless gravel plains, or the winding, rocky canyons. To survive this, he must enter a state of quiet watchfulness. He is always observing. He watches the gait of his camel, alert for any sign of a limp or fatigue. He observes the position of the sun and the stars, his natural compass. He notes the texture of the sand underfoot, a skill that helps him avoid softer patches where a camel might founder and injure itself. His sensory world is simple and powerful. The feeling of the hot sun on his head and the back of his neck, shielded only by the simple cloth of his head covering. The taste of dust that is always in his mouth, a taste he has known his entire life. The constant, soft, hypnotic padding of the camel's feet, a sound so familiar it is like his own heartbeat. The rhythmic creak of the leather saddle and the faint jingle of a bell. Water is life. Measured out in careful sips, he drinks from his water skin sparingly, the water lukewarm and tasting faintly of the cured leather it is stored in. It is not for pleasure, but for survival. His food is dates, hard, dry bread that lasts for weeks, and perhaps a piece of dried, salted meat. There is no comfort here, only sustenance. The camellia's life is one of immense loneliness. Yet he is never truly alone. He is part of the small, moving community of the caravan. In the evenings, when they finally make camp around a small fire of desert scrub, the men share their food and their quiet companionship. They speak of their families, of past journeys, of the quiet dangers of the road. These dangers are a constant, low-level presence, not just the threat of raiding tribes, which the armed guards are there to deter, but the more common and insidious perils of the desert. A sudden, blinding sandstorm that can blot out the sun and erase the path. A camel that suddenly sickens and dies. A hidden cistern that is found to be cracked and empty. These are not dramatic events to be fought, but quiet, life-threatening crises that are met with the stoic patience and the shared ingenuity of the group. For weeks, sometimes months, this is his entire world. A slow, moving line of life between a vast earth and a vast sky. His reward is his pay. A few silver coins that will support his family until the next caravan. His life is one of profound hardship, of quiet endurance, and a simple, unadorned dignity. Now, let us leave the camellia in the shimmering heat of the desert and travel to his destination. Let us step into a courtyard house in the city of Petra. Here lives the wealthy Nabotean merchant who has financed the caravan and who will profit immensely from its cargo. His day also begins at dawn, but his experience could not be more different. He awakens not on the hard ground, but in a comfortable bed on soft woolen mats. His room is cool and quiet, its walls plastered and perhaps painted with frescoes of gardens. Some rooms in his villa might even be carved directly from the cool, red rock of the Petra hillside, providing natural insulation from the desert heat. A servant enters silently, drawing back a curtain, and brings a basin of cool, clean water for washing, and a cup of wine, sweetened with honey, or a refreshing drink of yogurt. The merchant's house is a haven of peace, an engineered luxury. It is built around a central open-air courtyard. Up in the center of the courtyard, a small fountain, fed by the Nabateans' masterful water system, bubbles and the sound of this water is a constant, soothing music, and the ultimate status symbol in a desert city. Around the fountain is a small, irrigated garden, where fig trees, pomegranates, and fragrant flowering vines grow, their scent perfuming the air. The rooms of the house open onto this courtyard through shaded porticos, their columns carved with elegant floral designs. The merchant's day is not one of physical labor. It is a day of information, connection, and quiet negotiation. He spends his morning in a shaded room, what the Romans would call a tablinum, his office. He does not stand or walk. He reclines on plush cushions arranged on a low couch. Scribes sit before him, reading reports delivered by runners news from his agents in southern Arabia, dispatches from the port at Gaza with the latest shipping schedules, letters from his business partners in Alexandria detailing current market prices. His work is to manage the intricate web of his business, a web that spans thousands of miles. Later, other merchants may visit. They are welcomed not into a functional office, but into the beauty of the courtyard. They sit with him by the fountain, sheltered from the sun. Servants, quiet and efficient, bring them trays of food, bowls of olives, fresh goat cheese, succulent figs and dates, nuts, and slices of roasted meat. They sip cool wine from fine, painted ceramic cups imported from Greece or Italy. Their negotiations are polite, unhurried, and shrewd. They discuss the price of the incoming frankincense. They arrange for its onward journey. They form partnerships and trade route alliances. Their words are soft, but these words move fortunes across the known world. The merchant's sensory world is one of cultivated pleasure. The dominant smell is of the flowers in his garden, of the expensive perfume oil he wears, of the high-grade frankincense he burns in a small bronze brazier, not for a god, but for his own enjoyment. The dominant sound is the gentle splash of his fountain and the murmur of quiet conversation. The taste is of fine food and cooled wine. The feeling is of cool, smooth, mosaic floors under his bare feet and fine, dyed linen on his skin. His immense wealth is visible everywhere. In the intricate, colourful mosaics depicting scenes from mythology, in the frescoes on his walls, in the gold and silver rings on his fingers, in the fine jewellery worn by his wife and daughters, his family lives a life of complete insulation from the hardships that generated their wealth. Their world is this cool, fragrant, and beautiful house and the protected, rock-carved streets of their astonishing city. The Camellia and the merchant exist in two separate universes, and yet their lives are as intertwined as the ropes on a camel's pack. The merchant's luxurious existence, his entire fortune, his beautiful home, and his peaceful life depends utterly on the endurance, the skill, and the quiet suffering of the anonymous cameleer who walks his cargo across the desert, and the cameleer's livelihood, his ability to feed his family, depends on the merchant's capital, his connections, and his grand enterprise. One man walks the earth, his face to the sun and the wind, his reality immediate and physical. The other sits in a shaded paradise carved from the earth, his reality a web of information and numbers. Both are essential, irreplaceable links in the long, fragrant, and immensely profitable chain that carried the tears of a sacred tree from a silent wadi in Arabia to the altars of the gods and the palaces of and so the journey of the frankincense is complete. From a tear on a lonely tree in a sun-drenched wadi, to the back of a slow-walking camel, to a merchant's cool courtyard, and finally to a column of fragrant smoke on a temple altar, the great city of Petra is quiet now. Its magnificent facades, home only to the wind, the caravan routes are faint tracks in the sand, their secret cisterns long since run dry. The gods to whom the incense was offered are themselves mostly memories. Time, like the desert sand, eventually covers all things. The great ambitions, the hardships, the wealth, and the prayers all soften and fade, leaving behind only a faint, lingering perfume in the pages of history. You have walked a long road tonight, across the desert and through the centuries, but that road has now come to an end. Your journey is over. There are no more caravans to follow, no more temples to visit. Let the story dissolve. Let the images of the sand and the stars, of the smoke and the stone drift away. Your only task now is to rest. Let your mind become as still and as silent as the desert at midnight. Vast, peaceful, and clear. Feel the gentle, steady rhythm of your own breathing. A quiet, effortless rise and fall. There is nothing else for you to do. Nowhere else you need to be. This moment of peace is yours. Allow yourself to sink into the deep comfort of stillness. Let go of the world and welcome the profound peace of sleep. Rest now. Drift deep and sleep